From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon and welcome to the new newscast. According to the RCMP, officers were called to 201st Street and 84th Avenue around 7:30 a.m. this morning. Police found one person who was suffering from a gunshot wound who was immediately shuttled to hospital. There is no update on the victim's well-being, but police say the public should not be concerned about any further danger. Local Vancouver middle and high school, middle and high schools have been gaining some valuable basketball knowledge over the past few weeks. With more, here's our reporter Nathan Maley.
The Vancouver Bandits of the Canadian Elite Basketball League are BC's only pro basketball club, but they want to help bring an NBA team back here in the future. Part of how they are doing this is getting involved in the younger ages of basketball, hoping to develop more NBA talent in the future, something that BC needs to be considered. Bandits President Dylan Couillard understands that they need to be focusing on this age demographic.
Majority of youth playing basketball is in the middle school and high school ranks, and myself in ownership and Kyle, it was very important to us to support the middle school and high school system.
Which is what they've been doing with head coach Kyle Julius going around to schools in the area and offering advice to local players and coaches. Nathan Maley, 1680 The Crow.
Our reporter Nathan has been kind enough to join us in studio today. How are you doing, Nathan?
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I'm doing great.
Excellent. So how many basketball programs have the Bandits visited?
Yeah, so head coach Kyle Julius has been to over 30 schools across Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley area so far.
Excellent. And why is it important the Bandits are doing this?
Well, there's no NBA team in Vancouver anymore, and part of the reason is because there is not enough NBA talent in the league. There's only two current players, I believe, right off the top of my head that I can think of. So they kind of want to start developing players early in middle school and high school, and hopefully that can translate into an NBA team in the future with more talent.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Nathan.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. The Canadian Coast Guard told BCIT News that the barge that was drifting towards English Bay on Sunday was empty. The barge became untied due to unsteady waters and began floating towards the shore. Our reporter Sean Park has the details.
The Canadian Coast Guard says that the barge was empty. They also say that the two Coast Guard vessels prevented the barge from drifting off to the beach while a commercial tugboat was on its way. Deval Shaw is the Associate Dean of the BCIT Marine Campus. He says that those barges are usually never tied up, and empty barges aren't something people should worry about.
They don't have any dangerous cargo like oil. They don't have any cargo which can damage the environment. So that is more important for us to pay attention to, because if there's a barge with oil or with chemical, then it can cause more harm to the environment.
Shaw also says the problem is when the barge starts to move back and forth due to the sea waves, causing the ropes to be untied. Sean Park, 1680 The Crow.
Another pair of hikers had to be rescued last night in Squamish. The two people stranded were from Denmark and found themselves stuck on a steep section of Mount Habrick. The same area 2 days earlier, officials had to rescue another hiker. The hikers were located safely, but Squamish Search and Rescue released a statement online urging people to be diligent. They say that the winter conditions are much different at the top of the peak than they are at the base, and people should plan for the worst. Christopher Nolan's recent film Oppenheimer comes out on Blu-ray today and is currently not available on streaming. The director made comments recently that could be a sign that physical media is making a comeback. Jerison Arashan discusses the film with YouTuber Daesuk Bepu.
According to Variety, Nolan at a screening encouraged everyone to buy the Blu-ray of Oppenheimer so that no streaming service can take it away from you and put a lot of effort into its release. As films are either leaving, moving, or removed and never seen again in streaming services, people are coming back to Blu-rays despite not a lot of major retailers like Best Buy selling them. Daisuke Beppu is a YouTuber currently living in Los Angeles who specializes in film.
If you can watch it again and again, then I think the price of it will be totally worth it to you.
He also says that Blu-ray labels, including the Criterion Collection, Arrow Video, Radiance Films, and Vinegar Syndrome, still create an appetite for physical media. Jerison Rashawn, 1680 The Crow.
The provincial government is killing wolves as they plan to survey for the population of moose. The Ministry of Water, Land, and Resources said in a statement that the practice is an effective temporary measure so the population of endangered animals can flourish. According to an estimate, there is approximately 8,500 wolves in British Columbia. The ministry also said the caribou protection program has been pivotal for wildlife conservation in British Columbia. Public elementary school teachers in Ontario have reached a tentative agreement with the government. The Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario recently voted 95% in favor of a strike. The president of the program, Karen Brown, has more on the current status of the story.
We were able to achieve many gains in working conditions for our members along those priorities. So I believe our members will be happy. The ultimate decision is going to be theirs. I do believe we've seen some significant improvements.
Over to the island now. There is a police warning out urging residents near downtown Victoria that a cougar has been spotted roaming around the city. The cougar was spotted near Jutland Road and Dunedin Street near the Victoria waterfront and downtown core. The latest report is that a team of conservation officers are tracking the animal. The police are urging people that if they see the animal not to approach it and to alert authorities as soon as possible. Over to international news now. The Israeli-Hamas conflict continues, but hopes of a ceasefire appear to be getting closer. Hamas has stated they are open to freeing Israeli hostages if Prime Minister Netanyahu agrees to a ceasefire. Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly says Canada is closely watching the situation.
Our objective right now is that finally humanitarian pauses are allowed to happen. And we think that this potential deal could lead to a form of eventually ceasefire, but first it needs to happen. We need to see humanitarian pauses.
At least 10 people are dead after an illegal gold mine collapsed on Monday in Suriname, authorities say. Charles Ledesma of the Associated Press reports.
Rescue crews have been combing through mounds of earth in hopes of finding survivors as the government launches an investigation into the deadly incident that occurred on Monday in the country's remote southern region. It's considered the South American country's worst mining accident. President Chan Santoki says the incident occurred in an area where a gold vein was previously discovered, attracting large groups of illegal miners. Zhejiang Mining, a company that operates a legal gold mine in the area, had been meeting with the government just hours before the incident to find solutions to illegal mining at the concession of its subsidiary Rosebel Gold Mines NV. I'm Charles Ledesma.
South Korea is accusing North Korea of attempting to launch a spy satellite into orbit Tuesday evening. Military officials out of South Korea say that if they continue to try to launch this satellite, South Korea may be forced to intervene. Charles Ledesma of the Associated Press has details on the accusation.
The military in Seoul says the rocket was launched late on Tuesday. The North's two previous attempts failed because of technical reasons. Pyongyang had vowed a third launch and says it needs a spy satellite to deal with what it calls increasing US-led military threats. South Korea retrieved debris from the first launch and called the satellite too crude to perform military reconnaissance. South Korea's military recently suggested it could suspend a 2018 inter-Korean agreement to reduce tensions and resume frontline aerial surveillance and firing exercises if the North went ahead with its launch. I'm Charles Ledesma.
Now over to sports. The Vancouver Canucks hosted the San Jose Sharks last night. The Swedish forward Niels Höglander was given a game misconduct for intent to injure after slew-footing Kevin LeBlanc. The Canucks were able to snap a two-game losing streak, winning the game 3-1. The Orcas will take on the Colorado Avalanche tomorrow night at 7. Over to the gridiron now, where the Kansas City Chiefs took on the Philadelphia Eagles in a Super Bowl rematch. The Chiefs marched forward without Taylor Swift and inevitably fell to Jalen Hurts and the Chiefs. Hurts had some comments after the victory.
When you play a team and you lose to them many times, you know, that is what it is, but there's always a competitiveness there versus everyone we play. And so I'm just happy we found a way to come and win in this environment versus a really good team.
Fortunately for Swifties turned Chiefs fans, Taylor will be returning to the sidelines next week. Over to the NBA now. The Toronto Raptors are set to play in their second game of the NBA's first ever in-season tournament. The winner of the tournament received an inaugural NBA Cup, as well as every player on the winning team $500,000. The Raptors are the only team in the NBA to have only played one game so far in the league's new tournament. Tip-off starts tonight at 4 p.m. against the Orlando Magic. The Montreal Alouettes excuse me, the Montreal Alouette fans have officially mapped out their parade route for the Grey Cup celebration. The Alouettes won the title in a nail-biter on Sunday versus the Blue Bombers. The parade is set to begin at 11:30 a.m. on Wednesday. Alouette players, General Manager Danny Masiosia, President Mark Waitman will all be in to take in the parade. The legendary sorry about that. Milwaukee Bucks have won their fifth straight game, 142-129 over the Washington Wizards yesterday. Giannis Antetokounmpo says, oh, and that's gone. Sorry, technical difficulties here. Over to weather. The forecast today consists of mostly cloud until around 5 o'clock. After that, we can expect rain until just before midnight. Starting Wednesday morning, we have sunshine all the way through Sunday. Although it's sunny, people should be aware that the highs will be dropping to 8 degrees and the lows all the way down to 0, making icy services more likely. Thanks for listening. I'm Kevin Pontius for 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Teresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Trentanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
This is 1680 The Crow, and you're listening to our feature presentation.
Hockey is a dangerous game, and due to a recent tragedy that has shaken the hockey world, we have been forced to take a deeper look at league safety at all levels.
Adam Johnson was a 29-year-old ice hockey player who had played in the NHL. And on October 28, 2023, in an English Elite League or EIHL match, he would have his throat cut in a tragic accident on the ice, which led to his tragic death. And in the weeks since, the incident has caused many leagues all around the world to mandate neck guards for all players.
The EIHL, minor hockey associations around the country, adult hockey, the WHL, and all other forms of junior hockey in Canada, except the PGHL, the VIJHL, and the KIJHL, and the BCHL, have all mandated neck guards be worn by their players. Welcome back to 1680 The Crow. I'm Liam Higgs. Today, me and my partner Chris Koo will be discussing the safety changes throughout the years in hockey and why some leagues still have yet to mandate neck guards. Brian Wiebe, general manager of the Port Moody Panthers in the PGHL, told us about how his team responded to the tragedy.
I mean, it's a tragic situation, what happened with Adam Johnson, and I know that it was a talking point among our players, and I would imagine the same for players around the league. Like, we mandated that players that wear the neck guards. Although, that being said, we're very aware of the equipment supply chain issues. And so it's not something that it's like, well, you're not going to be able to play if you don't have one. But the fact is, we want all of our players to wear them.
Now, you may think it's as simple as going to your local sports equipment store and buying neck guards for all your players. But there may be a logistical issue that is slowing leagues down, as Jared Ellison, a manager from Cycle Taylor, explains.
The only issue would be if there's a high volume of sales in a small period of time. Having Bauer and CCM provide the stuff right away, that's the problem.
However, how serious is this problem, and is it a good excuse to not mandate a potentially life-saving piece of equipment?
As of right now, no.
Right.
But it can be if the demand is tripled when it's, or not even times 10 in a very small period of time.
And believe me, the demand for neck guards is high.
We asked Jared if there has been more demand recently and what the demand for neck guards looked like before what happened to Adam Johnson.
In some capacity, yes, it's not specifically neck guard, but neck protection, period. Right. Not for adults.
Not for adults.
Kids are usually required to have neck guards, so that didn't change.
Right.
But I think the adults community is a little more cautious now.
I know that as a team, we talked about the fact that once this idea was going to catch fire in the hockey community as a whole across Canada and around the world, that there would likely be a run on neck guards, and the manufacturers may not be able to keep up with the volume of teams and leagues that would be wanting to get this piece of equipment.
With the demand for neck guards on the rise because of teams and in some cases whole leagues needing neck guards for 25 plus players ASAP, how is it for the parents of those young junior hockey kids?
Yeah, no, I'm kind of surprised they're not wearing them. They're wearing full face shields. You would think they would wear them. I mean, I think it makes sense at this level. I mean, not that it's a fully recreational league, it's still junior hockey, but at the end of the day, I mean, safety is probably more important than being a little bit uncomfortable.
Adult neck guards currently go anywhere from $20 to $30, which can be quite expensive, especially when you factor the amount of players on a team that need to be accounted for.
The discussion of mandated neck guards has been around since the age of dinosaurs, but many believe that the PJHL and Pacific are coming close to making the right decision. The coach and general manager of the Grandview Steelers, Bruno Aldo, talks a bit about what may be happening around the league.
There is some discussion happening right now between the league. I think it will happen, but at what point, I don't know.
There are other problems than that, one of which we heard from the parents earlier, and that's just some people find neck guards uncomfortable to wear. However, there could be more of an issue than just logistics and comfort. Brian Weebs shed some light to why more players don't already wear neck guards if it is an option.
There's a bit of a machismo attitude, but I also know that there is still this act of bravado, and you're not a true hockey player if you're protecting yourself as best as possible, and stuff like that, which is false. Just a comfort level. Like every new piece of equipment that you haven't used before takes an adjustment, and that adjustment eventually comes, but it might come at too slow of a pace. For a player that's not used to wearing a neck guard, all of a sudden either wants to and has to get used to it, or has to and then gets used to it.
Though Mr. Weep and others believe that the changes are for the best and are coming soon.
We want to do the best we can to protect our players. It's probably something that should have been in place a long time ago, to be honest. But now it's better late than never. I wouldn't be surprised to see the BCHL go that way as well. I wouldn't even be surprised if Hockey Canada came forward and said every player under a certain age level, which would probably be U18, I would think, will have to wear a neck guard. I think from a governing body of the sport in the country, that Hockey Canada will eventually come to that, although I don't anticipate that happening until 24-25 at the earliest, because it'll come after Hockey Canada's Congress next spring.
Coach Aldo also decided to share his thoughts on if the changes were good and if they were coming soon.
Some teams are waiting to hear what the league's thinking is and what side. So I'm pretty confident that something will come down pretty quick. Like I said, through minor hockey, they've had to wear one right up to they get to junior. So I really don't see the reason why they had to take it off. But to me, it's something they're used to playing. Why not keep it on?
Discussions on the mandates have been rampant in all leagues since October 28th. However, some leagues are still in limbo whether or not they can or should mandate neck guards. However, with plenty of leagues having already mandated neck guards some for years now, it could be hard to argue against the mandates.
I could see it happening where it did with helmets. Like there was a grandfathering rule in helmets. Like Craig McTavish didn't play with a helmet, well into, I think 1997 was when he finally retired.
Coach Aldo makes a really good point. Neck guards have been mandatory in minor hockey associations for a long time now. So why do they take them off as they get older?
It comes back to what Mr. Weep said earlier. The whole macho man attitude that surrounds hockey has been in sports since the beginning. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon.
The problem you will run into is when the tough guy look gets in the way of being safe. The attitude you will get from people inside the hockey world, especially the old guard, is protecting yourself to the best of your ability is seen as being soft or not tough, which for obvious reasons can lead to very bad outcome. This mentality is all around the sport of hockey. From the NHL to Little League, there will always be discussions on what's needed and what's not for the sport. Once upon a time, players, including goalies, were not required to wear masks, which of course is ridiculous to think about by today's standards. Helmets for players, in fact, were not mandatory until the 1979-1980 season. And in fact, the first goalie to ever wear a mask was Jacques Plante, who was ridiculed for wearing a mask after being struck in the face with a puck. Mr. Weeb shares some of his thoughts on how the changes might look similar to how safety changes have worked in the past.
I think that it's hard for a player or a parent to argue against it when you look at, in major junior hockey, it's been mandated in the OJHL or the OHL and the Quebec Major Junior League for years, like more than a decade. And then the Western Hockey League just recently put it in. I think it's coming in the National Hockey League.
The PGHL sibling leagues, the KIJHL and the VIJHL, have already started to mandate neck guards across their teams.
Unfortunately, with the logistical issues and other issues in the sport of hockey, it is still unclear if and when the PJHL and the BCHL will be mandating neck guards.
Thanks for joining us today to talk about some hockey on 1680 The Crow podcast. I'm Liam Higgs.
And I'm Chris Koo. We hope to see you next time.
everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Trettenero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Welcome back to 1680 The Crow. I'm Caitlin O, and here is your news to 12:30. One person is in hospital after a shooting in Langley this morning. RCMP says officers were called to the area of 201 Street and 84th Avenue near Chelsea Townhomes around 7:30 this morning. Officers found one person suffering from what is believed to be a gunshot wound and was taken to hospital. Officers are still at the scene investigating, and they say there is no risk to the public at this time. Burnaby City staff are proposing a new property tax hike of 4.5% for next year. The proposed increase is part of next year's $1.4 billion budget. The tax increase equates to an $87 increase for the average residential property that is worth around $1.3 million. The proposed increase could generate a total of $18.7 million for the city. The food pantry at BCIT is run by the Student Association, and they're hosting a food drive campaign to encourage more donations. Our reporter Sean Park has more on some of their initiatives.
The BCIT Student Association is running a campaign that actively encourages students and faculty members to donate to their ongoing food drive. The donation box to help out the food drive is in the lobby behind the BCIT Essays Information Help Desk. They say the visit to the food pantry have more than doubled since 2022 and are open to receiving both monetary and any kind of food with a long shelf life without refrigeration. They plan to collect non-perishable food donations such as canned beans until December 15. Sean Park, 1680, The Crow.
BC's basketball is continuously growing, and BC's only pro club is trying to develop the game. With how they are doing this, here's our reporter Nathan Maley with more.
The Vancouver Bandits are the closest thing to an NBA team for Metro Vancouver, but they would love to help bring a franchise to the area. BC has produced minimal NBA talent over the years, with only 2 current NBA players from the province, something that would need to change to bring a team back to Vancouver. Bandits head coach Kyle Julius is trying to change that by getting involved early with middle and high school programs. Julius has been visiting Metro Vancouver schools over the past few weeks, running practices for teams and giving coaches and players alike advice. Bandits president Dylan Coular says the feedback has been nothing but positive so far, and Julius is expected to continue doing these visits after the holidays next month. Nathan Maley, 1680, The Crow.
Christopher Nolan's recent film Oppenheimer comes out on Blu-ray today and is currently not available on streaming services. The director made comments recently that could be a sign that physical media is coming back. Our reporter Jerison Orashan discusses this with film YouTuber Daisuke Beppu.
According to Variety, Nolan at a screening encouraged everyone to buy the Blu-ray of Oppenheimer so that no streaming service can take it away from you and put a lot of effort in its release. As films are either leaving, moving, or removed and never seen again in streaming services, people are coming back to Blu-rays despite not a lot of major retailers like Best Buy selling them. Daisuke Beppu is a YouTuber currently living in Los Angeles who specializes in film.
If you can watch it again and again, then I think the price of it will be totally worth it to you.
He also says that Blu-ray labels, including the Criterion Collection, Arrow Video, Radiance Films, and Vinegar Syndrome, still create an appetite for physical media. Jerison Rashawn, 1680, The Crow.
Canada's Justice Minister Arif Virani is pledging that a bill aimed to protect Canadians from online hateful speech is coming soon. Virani says comments being made in light of the October 7th attacks by Hamas on Israel is translating to real-life violence.
We've had attacks this weekend in Toronto. We've had shootings at schools in Quebec that deal with Jewish students. That's not what we need in this country, and I think an online hate bill can help to address that.
The legislation was first promised in 2019, but Virani did not reveal when he might table it. And now to weather. In Vancouver right now, it's 9 degrees and cloudy. Light rain is expected to begin at around 4 p.m. today, and temperatures will drop to a low of 3 degrees overnight. That was your news to 12:30. I'm Caitlin O, and you're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikka-King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikka-King. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Microlink, connecting you with your BCIT community. Hello everybody, my name is Tatiana Yakovleva and you're listening to the fall episode of Microlink, Microlink is a podcast brought to you by the BCIT Student Association. Personally, I think fall is an exciting time, and I'm actually excited to introduce a new voice to this podcast. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which BCIT's main campuses are located is the traditional and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the shared traditional territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam First Nations. Today, we're joined by Sean Park, one of my coworkers, and Nick Dechev, a professor at University of Victoria. But being a professor is not the only thing Nick is occupied with. Today, we will be learning about what Victoria Hand Project is, how Nick's master's project helped found it, and where it is at today. In order to do it justice, I will let Sean take it away from here.
Hello everybody, I'm here with Nick Dechev. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Nick Dechev. I am the founder and currently Chief Technical Officer of Victoria Hand Project.
Seems like you have a lot of things going on. Let's start with your background in robotics. You teach at UVic, correct?
Yes. Now, I'm not currently teaching robotics. I do teach engineering design. And I teach a variation of that, which is, mechanics of machines, so that sort of thing. So it's very much close to robotics. And I have extensive robotics experience from my PhD. But yeah.
And speaking of, how has the robotics field changed and grown throughout your career in the field? And as a PhD professor, you're very knowledgeable in this field. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So just to clarify, the Victoria Hand, which we'll be talking about shortly, although it's based on, mechanical principles, it's not technically robotic because the Victoria Hand doesn't use any electric components by design. However, I know quite a bit about robotic prosthesis. I've been following it for, 27 years. My master's was in robotic prosthesis at University of Toronto. But we decided to take the Victoria Hand in a slightly different direction, which is just mechanical only.
Right.
But the field is advancing. The main advancements in robotic prosthetics are pretty much challenges on controlling them. That is to get the desires of the person wearing the prosthesis. How do you get someone's desire? What's in their head? Like, I want to do this. How do you get that into the machine? So that is some of the most challenging stuff, and that's where the most innovation has happened in the last 10 to 15 years. The machines themselves, however, there's some really cool ones out there, but they, actually haven't advanced that much. There's some refinements here and there, but I'd say the mechanical, electromechanical part of prosthesis has been the same for a while.
Right, and you briefly mentioned that robotics is not associated with Victoria's Hand project because it's mostly mechanical. So can you tell me more about the organization and what does mechanical really mean to an average person?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so okay, well, I'll tell you a bit about Victoria Hand in general, and then you might understand why we've chosen the mechanical only aspect. So when we started, Victoria Hand is in fact based on my master's work from 1998 to 2000 at the University of Toronto. And I worked inside a prosthetic clinic in a place called Sunnybrook Hospital, and got a lot of feedback about what prosthetics looks like, just coming up to the year 2000 and how it can be improved. And like probably hundreds of other students across the world, I decided to take, a journey into prosthetic development. So I created this interesting mechanical hand, and it finished my work. And then over the years, it after we published a paper on it, it generated a lot of interest on the mechanics of it, not the robotics, but the mechanics of it, how it worked. Roll forward 12 years later, it was about 2012, and like many projects done, they sit in shelves for years. And sometimes other technologies have to catch up to make an old project work well. I think we can see that with computing these days with a lot of new technology. So some students found the hand. They said, "Hey, Dr. Dechev, we'd like to 3D print this." And I said, "Oh, 3D printing that'll never work. It's not strong enough." And they said, "No, it's really, really good." And I'm like, "I don't believe it." And so they said, "Can we try?" I said, "Of course you can try." So they 3D printed a very crude version of the 1999 hand. They brought it to me, and we were playing around with it, and I was actually shocked to see how strong it was. I couldn't believe it. And this was on a cheap $2,000 printer. And that's when kind of the beginnings of the Victoria hand were born. So we took an old design that was proven and published, and we converted it into a 3D printed design. And that took almost a year and a half, because you can't just print exactly the same way it's made. We got some grant money, and we started the Victoria hand in Guatemala in 2014 as a research project. And it wasn't even called the Victoria hand back then. We just called it the 3D printed prosthesis. It had no name. And here's the moment where it got interesting. So it's a very lengthy process to write an application to do testing with people. There's a lot of human ethics involved, and you have to make sure that things work okay. And if anything goes wrong, what's your plan? So that's called, human research ethics. And we did that, and we ran the study with about 15 people in Guatemala. And at the end of the study, remember, this is our version 1.0 hand. At the end of the study, people were like, "Can we please keep this?" And we were shocked, because we didn't expect it to survive or to do well.
Right.
And we're like, "Oh, that's not in the plan." I mean, the plan is you try it, and then
it's a prototype.
Yeah, it was just a prototype, right? Replicated 15 times, for these different people. And so we said, okay, well, hold on, we're going to make some improvements from the feedback, and then we'll come back and we'll give you an updated version based on all the feedback, because things didn't go perfectly. Sometimes we had a broken finger here and there, and so forth. And so we ended up fitting these people again. And at that point, there was a lot of discussion in the room, like, "Hey, is this just research, or are we're fitting people and they're taking these home and they're using them? That's not research. It's foreign aid." So
it's doing it.
Yeah. So to make a long story short, we talked with the University of Victoria, and we said what we're doing, and we all agreed that it would be best to spin out this research project into a not-for-profit, which we did. And that was in 2015, and that's when Victoria Hand was born. That's when we had to name it something. And when we had to name the organization, we called it Victoria Hand Project, because we're engineers and we can't come up with anything more interesting.
It's straightforward and does the job.
That's right. So that's where Victoria Hand is from. And just to get back to your question on robotics, I think you can see through that story that because it's majority of it is 3D printed, it lends itself to be more mechanical than electronic. And when we were working in Guatemala, I, to this day, remember being in it was very kind for some of the amputees to invite us to their homes, because usually they come to the hospital, right? And they invited us, to go and visit them. And they didn't have running water, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have anything. They're just living in, one lady and her 2 kids were living in a kind of a brick building, earth floor, 3 walls and an outdoor stove. So, the idea of electricity, or, even charging batteries and she liked to wash clothes. And so the prosthesis is perfect because it's waterproof, because we made it with 3D printed material and metal. And so we realized that in developing countries, sometimes, the latest tech, the infrastructure isn't there, and it's not what people need. And so from there on, Victoria Hand continued to be mechanical only, and I'll tell you more about it later.
Well, that's very interesting. And what other site work have you done besides Guatemala?
Well, when we were working in Guatemala, one of my students, and when I say students, these are typically 3rd year or 4th year engineers and mechanical engineers, and biomedical engineers. And they all came to volunteer their time. So they're some of the top students. They were really excited about the project. So two of them, Pranay and Pranav, were from Nepal, and they were working on the project for quite some time. And one day, Pranay came up to me and he said, "Listen, Dr. Dechev, I'm Nepalese." And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know." I don't ask people their heritage because it doesn't matter to me. I mean, you're either good at what you do, and that's the bottom line, right? And so he said, "There's a great need in Nepal," and he said, "My father works at an orthopedic hospital in Nepal and in Kathmandu, and can we bring the Victoria Hand Project there?" And I said, "Oh, I'm not sure." And we applied for some more grant money and we got it, and then we expanded to Nepal, and from Nepal we also expanded into Cambodia. And then, people just through networking alone, about a year later, we got connected with Enable Community Foundation in the US, and they had heard about our hands and they had money, and together we expanded into Haiti. And then we went into Ecuador. And when I say expand, it wasn't like a one-shot thing. Like, we actually would fundraise, we would get 3D printers, we would do a trip, we would train them, and we'd partner with professional prosthetists. So suddenly, within a few years, we were in 5 countries, and word of mouth just kind of kept spreading. We got more grants. We got a Google grant in 2017, which really helped elevate the work into Egypt and into Uganda. And then we had an opportunity to expand into Kenya, which we did. I'm forgetting a country. I know I am. So we just kept growing. I mean, right now we have 9 countries that are very stable that we work in. Each country has like at least 3 or 4 printers. They have trained staff. We have a constant flow of materials going to each country, and they fit people. Every amputee has very unique needs. It's not a matter of just having a missing limb. And just to be clear, Victoria Hand only does upper limb. There's when someone says the word amputee, it's well known that about 9 out of 10 amputees, that means people who have a limb loss, have a lower limb loss. 90% of amputees are lower limb patients. So only 10 or 15% are upper limb. So we only work with upper limb people, and there's several reasons for that. But what that has allowed us to do is to become experts, really, really good at doing just that. And upper limb loss is quite complex as well. There's if you have an upper limb loss at your wrist or at your forearm or higher on your forearm or past your elbow, there's different ways you have to treat that with prosthesis. And so that's all we do. Yeah. Because upper limb loss is so unique, and without getting into too many details, there was one boy in Kenya, that Michael Perrone, who's currently CEO of Victoria Hand. We were just perplexed. We're like, how are we going to fit this child with a prosthesis? Because he had double limb loss and also leg loss. He had been in an accident, and the anatomy of his limbs was really challenging to fit. But we're engineers, and it took a bit of time, so we couldn't fit him right away. But we developed it, and because we established those partnerships on the ground in the country, once we tried something here, we tested it, we made sure it worked. Then we sent them the digital files, and we walked them through fitting him, and they eventually fit him. And then we learned from that. So now when people have that same type of limb disfigurement, we can fit them too. And we just recently fit a fellow in Ukraine, in Vinnytsia, who had the same, this man is much older, but it was the same type of limb issue. And we're like, oh, we've done this before. Let's train our partners on how to do this. And we did. And he was fit in a matter of a week. So yes, we have special cases, we learn, and we keep adding to our digital collection of ways to fit people. Yeah.
Embrace the magic of winter at BCIT Student Association's 2nd annual Winterfest. Over 20 vendors to suit your holiday needs with student-friendly pricing. Join us, Wednesday, November 15th, 2023 from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Be a part of the action in the Great Hall. Don't miss it. Brought to you by the City of Burnaby and the BCIT Student Association. Visit bcitsa.ca for more details.
And speaking of Ukraine, I know that you provided some aid and leave. Can you tell us more about that? I know it's a little different expanding into a country that is in an active war. How did that change your process?
Well, first of all, it was a very big decision to do that. We've never worked in a country prior to that was in a state of war. That's not who we are. We're engineers. We're not doctors. This is not something like MSF. We had a long discussion about whether it was okay for us to do that. I think with Ukraine, we ultimately decided that because it is such a vast country, it is a huge country, that if we were on one side of it, far away from the active areas of conflict, the risk would be lower. Obviously, there's missiles and bombs dropping everywhere, but we saw the huge need, and we were asked a number of times by people. We never push our way into places. Like, we just get requests, and after several requests, we ended up networking and making a partnership. We only do our partnerships through networking, and we found two suitable partners. And I did a exploratory trip in February this past year to meet them. And I felt that they would be great partners. It was relatively safe. And then we went back in June, and we actually outfitted both clinics with a whole bunch of printers, and so it's working now. It's getting supplies in is very long and slow, very long, but that's is what it is. So.
Is there any country that you're foreseeing a future expansion, or is it just whatever that comes through networking and connections that you can establish along the way?
It's all through networking. So people in the prosthetics community in Canada and the US, but especially the US as well, know who we are. We're friends with many of the top prosthetists. And, we were just down in the American Prosthetics Conference in Indianapolis in September, and we were there for about 5 days, and just met with some of the leaders and prosthesis, or chatting, and people know what we do. We also did a presentation there, and I think networking is the best way, because it's all about human interaction and connections, and so I think that's a very organic process. I forgot to mention a country. We were actually in Pakistan. We established a clinic. They built a brand new hospital there in, I think it's Karachi. And Michael and Kim, two of our team members, went over there in May. I guess 2 months before we went to Ukraine, and they established a full system over there. So they have it's a full, usually we get a room or two different rooms, and it's full of equipment in terms of 3D printing, assembly, computers, everything to do the Victoria hand on site. So yeah, we're also in Pakistan. But you're asking about future plans? Not really. Anywhere we expand, we have to fundraise, because it's just, each country is so unique. We like to keep it the same, but each country is really unique with its own challenges. So, yeah.
Right. And speaking of fundraising, is the project currently sustainable? Is there an established grant of revenue that comes in, or is this something that has to be a challenge every step of the way?
No, there's no steady, I wish there was, but there's no steady income. What I will say is that there's a lot of interest. When we fundraised for Ukraine, we had a very specific campaign that we did on social media, and there was an incredible amount of support. So we met our goal, and And we're very proud to say that, all those funds went exactly where we said they would go, because, that's what we do. I don't get a dollar out of Victoria Hand, not a single, never in my life, all these years, because I'm paid by the University of Victoria. In fact, every year I probably lose a few $1,000 because I don't bother to expense things. It's too much hassle. So I buy and I give and I give my time so yeah, no, it will continue to be usually on a project to project basis. That's how we fundraise. But because Victoria Hand goes and establishes in those countries, you're asking me about sustainability. It is sustainable. The doctors in Ukraine or the prosthetists or the doctors in Pakistan, they're funded by their hospital, right? They're employees of that's why we only partner with hospitals or clinics, because they're already there. They're already being paid. And so really, when you think about it, our model is all we're doing is supplying the designs, the ideas, and then to start them up, we supply the printers, but then the printers are there, they're working. And because there's 4 of them or 5 printers, they last, if one goes down, it doesn't matter. There's another 3 running, right? So, and they're very easy to service. Everything has been designed from 2014, 2015, from the beginning with sustainability. What happens if the power goes? What if this component breaks? What if this piece of the prosthesis breaks? Well, the person visits the clinic, which is only maybe an hour away, and they print a new piece and they put it in and it's done. It works. It's about making the prosthesis on site in the country, because then it's easy for everyone. The amputees, it's low cost. 3D printing a little latch maybe on the wrist, it's like 10 cents. It's a completely different model. Is you build on site. It's kind of like IKEA, except except the parts come out of a printer, if that makes sense.
That does, and I know that model specifically works for developing countries or countries that have potential to not have as many resources, like what you've mentioned about lights going out. How does this issue of amputees not having prosthetics translate to Canada? Is this something that Canadians face as well, or is it like a different issue? Or is it the same issue, but is it presented in a different manner?
It's different. So Canada is a very interesting system in terms of prosthetic and orthotic care. In Canada, for instance, the policies to help an amputee vary on a provincial basis. So if you are in Prince Edward Island, there is no prosthetic coverage, period. That's it. In British Columbia, you are allowed to receive 1 prosthesis to satisfy the minimum need. And that's a very important proviso. I'll talk about that in a second. Every 3 years. I'm giving you the simplified version. There's a bit more detail, like you can read the policies. It's actually every 3 to 5 years, and there's some, a bit of leeway. You actually make an application. So if you're an amputee in BC or Alberta or Ontario, you meet with a prosthetist, you talk, you fill out an application. It goes to something called PharmaCare here, and a review board reads it, and then they decide if they'll fit the person based on if it's been 3 years or so, and then what type of device they'll fit. And that's where the minimum need comes in. So you do not get the state-of-the-art, $50,000 prosthesis here. That will not be funded in British Columbia. What you get is usually a hook, or you get a nice myoelectric arm, but it's the low grade. It's like a $12,000, $15,000 arm. And they're quite nice, actually. I don't mean to demean it by saying it's low grade. In fact, I want to take that back. It's the minimum device that meets the need, but it's not as advanced as some of the stuff you see on Discovery Channel or anything like that. Not like that.
Of course, and we're talking about devices that meet minimum needs for physical needs in order to have a person function in the best and in the most able way possible. But Is there still some stigma and negative interpretation that is associated with prosthetics and amputees in general?
In Canada, in the US, in Europe, I would say no. I think that what we have done as society in these countries, the ones I've just named, is from childhood age, we've explained that people have differences. And so, you'll teach children to say that people have limb differences, right? There's all sorts of acceptance. And so what happens is people are who they are, and it's not a problem. And that has been a concerted effort over, a generation or two to do that. And I think we've achieved that because I certainly see amputees all the time in Canada, and they're like, yeah, I got no arm. And it's not a big deal. They can have a job, they can have employment. Nobody, people aren't pointing at them. In Guatemala or Nepal, it's completely different. Completely. It's a shame. In Haiti, there's the stories that we got. One of them was so crazy that we actually had to verify it. We heard the story and we thought, let's just verify it because this sounds so crazy. But we found the source and we talked to them. And so basically in Haiti, for instance, the bus drivers won't stop or taxis won't stop. They see you have a missing limb because it's bad. It's a belief system. It's like the person's cursed. They don't want them in the vehicle. You don't get jobs. In Guatemala, I remember the boy I spoke with and his father, we gave him a prosthesis, and the man said, listen, thanks for the prosthesis. It'll help my son. I appreciate it. He goes, but what my son really needs is a job. He's lucky, he gets straight A's in school, but the best job he can get is he picks watermelons in the fields. I have so many stories. I don't want to waste your time, but I remember this one in particular. And I remember every person I've ever met, actually, vividly. And so he said, he picks watermelons. That's the best job he can get. And the end of the season, as they're starting to get less and less need for pickers, they fire him first because he's the amputee. It's very different way of thinking throughout the world. And maybe we could look at that here in the West, and we can be judgmental about that and say, oh, that's terrible. But you can look at the other way around. People need to survive in these low-income countries. And so I don't think it's right that he's let go first, but they need to be efficient and make money and survive and feed their families. And so it's very difficult for amputees in other countries, very difficult. So, if our prosthesis in any way can help them get employment, that's like our top criteria. Anything. In Nepal, the ladies that we fit, if the prosthesis is black, they will not touch it. They will not wear it. Black means death. It has to be painted, and they cover themselves and they cover their hands, and sometimes they put little strings and braid it, and they'll wear little gloves on their prosthesis, and then you can't tell that it's not an artificial hand anymore. So they have the body image. They feel whole because they have two arms and hands, and they can they're able to carry a bag or to carry a purse or whatever, and they feel whole, but they don't want anyone to know that they're an amputee. I could talk for hours on it. I won't. I think you get the idea.
But I still really appreciate your time, and thank you for what you do. It helps physically and also helps out mentally as well. I think it does help bridge that gap. Unfortunately, there's probably a long way to go, but it definitely helps. Is there anything that you would like to highlight, any people that you work with, or promote Victoria's Hand Project before we go?
Yes, absolutely. So to be very clear, the Victoria Hand Project is a team. It has always been a whole team of people. I want to highlight, Michael Perrone, who has been with Victoria Hand since 2015. He started as a co-op student, and then he graduated and, became just an engineer, and then became the chief operating officer. And finally, I promoted him and changed my role, and he became the CEO. There's Kelly Knights, and she's currently the chief operating officer, and she was with us since 2017. And then there's Kim Arkell, and Kelly is an engineer as well. And then there's Kim, who's our mechanical systems lead. She's been with us since 2019 or 2020. We have Michelle, and then we have dozens of people who've worked with us over the years as engineers who've gone on to other careers, and we still keep in touch with all of them. I would say there's probably 30 engineers that have helped contribute to the Victoria Hand. That's some of the brightest people I know. And all that info is on our website. We have a list of previous members, and so people can go and check out who has helped. And every year we accept 6 co-op. It's called co-op students. They're like a 4-month work term where they work full time for 4 months. We have 6 per year that work with us. So we're always bringing in new people, volunteers, and so I want to acknowledge all of these people because without them, Victoria Hand wouldn't exist. It's just too much work, and their dedication and their time makes it all possible.
We'll put the link to your website in the description, but thanks again for your time.
That was Sean Park interviewing Nick Dechev about the Victoria Hand Project. Thank you so much for joining us today for Microlink. What did you think of this episode? Please don't hesitate to reach out to give your feedback. For more information about what Link and BCIT Student Association does, please visit linkbcit.ca. That is linkbcit.ca. You will be able to find our contact information on the website. And if you get bored, the website also has plenty of articles and podcast episodes to occupy your time. But that is going to be it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikki-King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikki-King. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.